Hey, what's up everybody? 8-Bit Flashback here. Today I am reviewing and testing the Powkiddy Q90. This handheld supports a wide variety of emulators for a lot of your favorite retro gaming consoles, from the 8-bit era all the way to the 32-bit era. The Q90 is available in a couple different color options, either blue or clear. And I did get mine from Powkiddy.com, and that link will be in the description. This features a 3-inch HD IPS LCD screen with 320 by 240 resolution, a rechargeable lithium battery with 6 hours of battery life, a ARM9 CPU, and it uses a Steward open source operating system. The construction of this handheld seems to be fairly solid, although the plastic used to make this is a little on the thin side, but it's not bad. As far as looks go, it does vaguely resemble the Nintendo Switch Lite, and it features some nice rounded corners and a bunch of buttons to make this compatible with a wide variety of emulators. So just look at the buttons on the front. We got the D-pad here, we got a 3D pad, we got 4 action buttons, a plus and minus button, and a select and start, and a left and right button on the top. Right here is going to be your charging port. This is USB-C. On this side is going to be your volume control, and on the bottom is going to be an SD card. This is a 16GB SD card. And here on the back is where your speakers are located and the access to the rechargeable battery. And there's really no need to remove this because it's all rechargeable. And here's a look at the menu. We got 4 different icons to choose from at the top, and we can scroll through these with the left and right buttons. Under the home icon, we got some applications such as a media player where we can play audio or video files. We also have an explorer where we can explore the files or contents on this device. And if we push the right button, we can scan over to the next icon, and this is going to be for the emulators. Inside here we got a bunch of different emulators we can play, and we'll be playing those here in just a few. The next one is going to be some built-in games. A lot of these are homebrew games or remixes of games that already exist. And the last one's going to be your settings. We can mess with some of the settings such as the theme, the brightness, audio, and some other features. Okay, let's head back over to the emulator icon at the top. And now let's go ahead and try some of the emulators out. We'll start with the Gameboy, and we're just going to go in order all the way down to the bottom, which will end with arcade. So we'll start with Gameboy first. And we do have some games that are already on this SD card. And I'm going to go ahead and scan through these. Now I can't play any of the Nintendo games for various copyright reasons. There is some on here, but we are not going to play those because I'll get in trouble. Let's go ahead and try Mega Man 5. So it seems to have really good sound to it. I don't hear much distortion. I'll turn it down here. I'll turn it back up. So at full volume, I don't hear any distortion. It sounds nice and clean, so that's a plus. The buttons are nice and responsive. Got my D-pad control, or I can use the 3D pad. So that's a nice option. We got the start button, works like normal. Plus button doesn't do anything for this game, but the minus button does bring up the emulator menu. From here we can save the game, we can load save games, we can quit the emulator or restart the emulator. So I'm going to go ahead and just return to the game. And the game seems to be playing great. I'm not noticing any problems here. Playing at a good speed. Might have been just a little bit of slowdown there, but I think that would have been present on the original Game Boy as well. Alright, well I think I've had enough of this game. Let's try something else. If we push the minus button, we can quit. So we'll go down to quit and select A. And let's go ahead and pick a different emulator. So if we push the start button, and get back to our emulator menu. Now let's try a Game Boy Advance game. And what do we want to try? Let's try Gunstar Heroes for Game Boy Advance. Boy, that notification is really annoying. Every time it tells you to go, it starts making that chiming noise. But as far as the emulation goes, it seems to be playing good. Now let's go and try another Game Boy Advance game out, and we're still using the GPSP emulator. And same thing with this game, it seems to be playing just fine. I'm not noticing any issues. And let's go ahead and play here for just a few. Okay, now let's try some Famicom or NES games, and I'm using the FCEUX emulator, and this is Ducktales. So right away when playing this game I noticed an issue, and that's that the game is playing just a little bit faster than it should be. And I think it's because it's a ROM issue. This ROM is the wrong format for this region, so I did go into my settings and I changed the PAL setting to on, and then the game started playing at a normal speed. So I think this was just a ROM issue. That was the only problem. And now it's playing like I remember. To access the settings menu or the emulator menu, you either push the minus button or start and select. It does vary depending on which emulator you are using. Now let's test out some Super Famicom or Super Nintendo using the SNES 9X 4D emulator. And we'll try out Contra first. Unfortunately, with this Super Nintendo emulator, I don't think it's quite configured properly for this device. It does not have very good performance. For instance, this game right here is running really choppy. It's running about half speed of what it should be. The frame rate should be at about 60, and this is running at about 25 to 30. And I did test multiple different games out just to make sure that it just wasn't Contra that was giving me issues. And a lot of different games were giving me issues, such as Mortal Kombat 3. It was playing even worse. But there was some games that were playing just fine, such as TMNT. And there were some other games on here as well that were playing okay. Now, I don't think this is an issue for this device not being powerful enough to play SNES games. I just think it's an issue with this particular emulator not being configured properly for this device. Okay, let's try some Game Gear now, using the SMS Plus GX emulator. And this is Streets of Rage, and it seems to be playing just fine. Now let's try some Sega Master System using the same emulator, and we'll test out some Altered Beast. And the emulation for this seems to be going really well. I don't see any issues here. Now let's try some Sega Genesis or Mega Drive, and we'll play some Mortal Kombat 3. And everything looks good here. The speed's good, the sound's good. I would say it's doing just fine for Genesis emulation. And I did test a handful of different games out for Genesis and Mega Drive, and they all had pretty similar performance. Now let's test some PlayStation using the PCSX Rearmed emulator, and we'll test out some Contra. As far as the emulation performance goes with the PlayStation games on this device, with a lot of your 2D games it does really well, but with a lot of the 3D games it does not do so great. And I'll show an example of that here in just a few. But as far as the emulation goes for Contra, I would say it's doing just fine, and it's plenty playable. Here's another game that plays good. This is Pepsi Man. And I did test out the 3D stick with this game and a couple other games with PlayStation, and I actually prefer just to use the D-pad still. The 3D pad does work, but it's a little sticky and it's just not really smooth to use, so myself, I just prefer the D-pad. And here's an example of a game that's not doing well. This is Tekken 3, and as you can see, it's playing extremely slow, and I would consider this not playable. So with this device, you want to play PlayStation games that are either less demanding or just 2D games, and they should work okay. Now let's test out some Neo Geo Pocket using the Neo Geo Pocket emulator. And this is King of Fighters. It seems to be doing okay, and I would say this is playable, but I would say it's running just a little slow. Now let's try some Wonderswan using the Wonderswan emulator. And we'll try out, I believe this game is called Legend. And same thing with this, the emulation is okay, it's playable, but I think it's running just a little slow still. Now let's try some PC Engine using the Temper emulator, and we'll try out Superstar. And the speed looks really good. It looks like this game would be playable, but I'm having issues with the controls. I tried a bunch of different things to get these controls to work, and for some reason my D-pad or the A and B buttons are just not responding. I did try to go into the settings and change some of the control configurations, but I did not have any luck. And again, I think this device can handle PC Engine no problem. I just think there's a configuration problem. Now let's move on to some arcade using the FBA 320 emulator. And this is Afterburner. And as you can see, that game did not do very well. But I did test some other games out, such as Street Fighter, and the performance was much better. Now let's try out another arcade game. This is The Punisher, and it seems to be playing great. As far as the emulation performance goes with the arcade games using the FBA 320 emulator, it seems to be either hit or miss. Some of the games play just fine, some of them play okay, and some don't really play at all. So you're just going to have to experiment with the different ROM sets out there. What you want to look for is arcade games that are compatible with the Final Burn Alpha emulator, and that should get you on the right track. So here's my final thoughts with the Q90 handheld portable device. Overall, I think it does a pretty good job with emulation across multiple different emulators. Obviously, it does have some issues with some of the emulators on this device, but there's thousands and thousands of games that you can play and have a lot of fun. Okay, it's time for me to get out of here. Have yourself a great day, and I'll see you next time. And if you like this video, if you could, hit that like button.